Hi, I'm Kendra Little, and I'm a DevOps advocate for Redgate. What this means is that I get to spend time talking to folks and thinking about the patterns and practices that help people successfully develop and deploy stable changes to their databases that bring value to the customers of these organizations. Recently, I went to a conference that was really great. It was the IDC DevOps Conference in London. And at this conference, I really liked the format. In the morning, we had a series of presentations. And one of the things in the afternoon, after a panel discussion, there were all sorts of different formats here, is we had workshops in the afternoons where we talked about different problems and potential solutions. And these workshops were collaborative. So I hosted a workshop, but I didn't get to tell the whole group, here's how it's done. That wasn't the point. The problem that we were solving in the group I was in was how to overcome the top obstacles to continuous delivery for databases. And what we zoomed in on was the fact that when you're starting out on a journey to implement database DevOps, you're working across silos. You've got the database folks generally working in their own silo. You've got developers generally working in another silo. And the larger the organization, the more complex it can be to establish new processes between these two groups because they have different ways of working. So starting out at the workshop, a lot of people at the conference, they're at different phases of implementing DevOps, and many are early on. So we did this exercise that not everybody was bought into at first. This exercise, it's built on a format called the Lightning Decision Jam session by AJ&Smart. And that itself is based on a great book called Sprint. It's about design thinking. And here's a little bit about how the workshop goes. You have everyone take a stack of either paper or Post-it notes. Having something sticky works, right? So everybody privately writes down different potential solutions to how could we make it easier to get people to take on the new processes required for database DevOps. So everyone generates these solutions and you focus on quantity, not quality. The idea is that everyone should just start generating ideas, right? Because it's like brainstorming, but without the pressure of having other people listen to your ideas. You're just recording them on sticky notes. So you have a time limit for that. And we did about 10 minutes of people generating their solutions. And at first, some people were like, well, I don't know what solutions I have for this because I haven't done database DevOps successfully. But the truth is, most people in the group had gone through IT changes and seen what worked well and what didn't work well. Most people in the group had observed a lot of behavior among their coworkers and seen what's difficult and what's not difficult. And also, a lot of people at the table had gone through agile transformations for the application tier and seen what worked and didn't work for that. So everybody actually had a lot of reference material to work from. So you generate all these solutions and then you come together. And the idea is that, each solution needs to be legible because you're not going to defend them. You're not going to explain them. What happens is what the facilitator does is then puts them up on a board. And we just used a wall in the room. If you've got a whiteboard, you would draw an axis for these. But first, you just spread them out on the wall. And you equip everyone with either voting dots or a pen because everyone silently reads all the solutions and puts dots on the one that any of them that they think would be viable. Now, you're not limited. You can vote for as many of these as you want. But the point is kind of that you don't vote for your own because, well, you already submitted yours. You already kind of voted for your own. So everybody kind of silently votes on these, doing dots. And the idea is not to do a bunch of talk during this, to just read them and vote on them. And then you do a filtering process where we filtered out anything that had less than 3 dots. These aren't terrible ideas necessarily. These are just things that the group doesn't think are going to be the most effective, right? So that narrows down the window of what you have. Then you take them all down again, the ones that pass the dot filter, and you arrange them by the amount of impact they have and the amount of difficulty they'll be. And this is where having that axis can come in handy. We just had to imagine the axis ourselves. So you've got a vertical axis, which is the amount of impact it will have on the organization if this is done, the amount it'll help you solve the problem. And you've got a horizontal axis, which is how difficult is it, right? So things that are very far to the left and very high up will be very high impact and not a lot of work. You can also have things that are high impact and a lot of work. You can have things that are low impact and a lot of work, and you have things that are low impact, not very good, but they are not a lot of work either. So we arranged them there. And this led us to identify things that are high impact, but not super duper challenging to do themselves. And the findings that the group came up with of the top 3 things that help people overcome these process obstacles to initiating change for continuous delivery is they found that establishing version control for database code is number 1. It is the foundation of so much collaboration between people that you really need to get code into version control and focus on that, right? This isn't always the simplest thing in the world, but it's really a necessary enabler for everything else. The group also has this concept of a minimum viable data set. And I loved this point, that in order to successfully do development work, we need a copy of a data set that enables progress. Ideally, in some cases, if production is a 10 terabyte environment, our minimum viable data set for development might be much smaller. It also, this viable data set may need to replace sensitive data that lives in production with non-sensitive data. In some environments, it may need to be synthesized, but we need to have this to support this work. The third thing that the group found is this enabler to break down these silos between teams and get database DevOps going is constant communications between the teams. We need to have teams really working together in order to establish these new processes, and we need to have the teams listening to one another. Additionally, in order to enable all of these things to happen, if you can identify an executive sponsor who can meet with the teams on a regular basis and emphasize that it's good for the organization for these teams to work together. It's good for them to take on this effort, and they're being supported by the organization at large. That is sort of an underpinning that can help this change go through. It's a really fun process at the IDC DevOps Conference. And I'm really, every time I've done this exercise, I've been impressed at the insights that come from the group, which is always so much fun because at the beginning of the exercise, there's so much doubt as to whether the team knows enough to overcome the challenge. But in this case, we certainly did. Thanks for joining me for this talk. I'm Kendra Little from Redgate, and this is Freya, our local expert on Kubernetes, who has joined me for this quick video. Bye, folks. I'll see you again in another video soon.